Hello, hello, hello. Good morning to all of you who are in the morning frame of mind, which we are. You can see, I seem as if I'm not woken up yet. I can't even find my words properly. So the subject today of our little Q&A is going to be, we changed it around just a little bit, Thanksgiving, hope and expectations. And around Thanksgiving time and Christmas time and around our celebration times, you know, birthday times and so on, there are so many hopes and expectations that all of us have. And, you know, we hope for things for Christmas, and as children, we hope for things for Christmas. Do we get them or don't we get them? We're going to be talking about the difference between hope and expectation, because some people do get that a little bit confused. And we're going to be basically discussing this morning, you know, what it means to have expectations of ourselves and high expectations of those around us, and how disappointing that can possibly be. So, as usual, I have my spirit guide Gregor, who is standing to my right side. Some of you may be able to see him. And then a little further to my right, I have my dearest Carolyn, who is my helpmate, smart girl that she is, who has figured out all of your questions, and she's the one who sits at the computer and does all those amazing things that I can't do. So I think, without further ado, very typical English phrase, without further ado, Carolyn, good morning. Let's have our first question, shall we?
Good morning. This question is from Marilyn from Ohio. Is there a difference between expectations and hope, and what is it?
Oh, I think there is a very, very great difference between expectation and hope. And I think that, you know, the difference is tied to and connected to pain and heartache somewhat. I know that we can be hopeful of things, and when things don't turn out as we hope they might, we can be disappointed. But when we expect things to turn out a certain way, when we have those expectations of a person behaving in a certain way, or a certain outcome at work, if you have those expectations, you are literally putting yourself right out there for the possibility of disappointment. Now, sometimes our expectations are met, but I try to instill in my students, instead of having those expectations, which can be so disappointing when they are not met, which they are often not. People don't behave the way we expect them to. Our children don't even behave the way we expect them to. So, you know, I suggest to my students that it's always a good plan to be hopeful rather than to be expecting an outcome, and to expect certain behaviors and certain situations from people and from you know, whatever's around us. So the difference, I would say, is when you expect something, it's almost as if you are just, you know, and almost demanding that this is the way things are going to be. When you are hopeful, you are merely hoping, wishing that you know, those hopes might be met, and if they are not, the disappointment is far less great. That's just my opinion. And for those of you who are live with us, and for those of you who are listening out there, you may have completely different opinions on this subject, and we'd love to hear about those opinions from you. So please feel free to write in anytime you like. In the meantime, Carolyn, why don't we have your next question?
This is, sorry, from Shauna. She asks, if hope sustains our expectations, which can lead to disappointment and pain, is hope always a good thing to have?
Personally, I don't think that hope necessarily sustains our expectations. I think that they are two different things. And And I think, as I've just said, I'm sorry, who was that?
Shauna.
Shauna. And I forgot to say thank you to the other lady who got the first
Marilyn.
question in, and Marilyn, thank you for your questions. Shauna, I agree with you that, you know, we are laying ourselves out there for disappointments in life, especially if we are expecting, if our expectations are too high. And I'm going to tell you a little story, and I love these little stories, and I know you're all always writing in saying, can we have more stories, Rosemary? So here is a story for you, and it's a pretty sad story. Fortunately, it happened to me many years ago. It's a personal story, and I had 3 sisters, 2 brothers and 3 sisters, but my brothers had left home long since, and so there were 4 of us girls, and there was roughly 2 years age difference between the 4 of us. And I came sort of next to the last, next to the youngest, so I was sort of that middle kid. And you know, my expectations as a child of fairness, and I think we all, you know, all of us as children have expectations of fairness, and the amount of times that my daughter used to say to me when she was little, Mama, it isn't fair, and I would say, did I ever tell you life is fair? So, you know, we all have those expectations. So this little story is about my expectations, and how I learned very early on in my life not to expect too much from anyone or any particular situation. So my eldest sister had 2 years before had a watch for Christmas. Then my next eldest sister, the following Christmas, which was the previous Christmas, had a watch for Christmas. And yippee, now we come to Christmas and it's my turn. And of course, hopes, expectations. I wasn't hoping, really. I was hoping, but I was more expecting, because I knew that this was the order of things. I was the next one in line. I was the one who, you know, it was my turn. Now, as many children do, and we were inspired, my younger sister and I, we were inspired by our older sisters. We would go around the house weeks before Christmas and we'd look in drawers and we'd sneak in boxes and we'd try to find some of the gifts that were hiding and lurking about in the corners. And this one particular day, my older sister climbed onto the top of my mother's wardrobe, and there in a suitcase, inside a suitcase that was sitting on top of the wardrobe, was a watch. And we all look at the watch, and of course I know that it's mine, because after all, it's my turn. So I go to school and all the kids are telling each other, what are you getting for Christmas? Well, I'm getting this and I'm getting that, and what are you getting? And kids would ask me, and I would blithely say, oh, I'm getting a watch. After all, it was my turn. How many times I have to say that to you? You know something's not going to pan out right. Come Christmas morning, my youngest sister and I, as we always did, my mother used to put a pillowcase full of toys and things in the sack, and we're going through them, and I'm looking for my watch. And it must be at the bottom of the stuff somewhere. It must be at the bottom of the pillowcase, because as hard as I look, I can't find the thing. When all of a sudden, my younger sister, and I'm sort of, let's say I'm like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, maybe, something like that. And my sister is 18 months younger than me. And so we're sitting there and we're going, ooh, to this and ooh, to that, and look what I've got here, and so on and so forth. I'm not interested in anything in that pillowcase except the watch, which I'm frantically searching for. And lo and behold, I hear my sister say, oh, I've got a watch. Well, that was still okay, because after all, if she got a watch, then we both had a watch, right? Because that would be fair, wouldn't it? Well, you know the story. There was no watch in my pillowcase. And I remember, and I can go back even this morning, even all of those years later, many, many years later. And I can still remember how I stood by my mother's chair, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And my mother saying, well, you know, I wanted to get you a gold watch, and I'll get you a gold watch with a black face like mine at some point in the future, blah, 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 blah. And the tears rained. My expectations were dashed and I was heartbroken. And I think at that point in time is when I stopped expecting things to be right, things to be fair, things to be just. My two older sisters had a bike and my younger sister had a bike. I never got the watch, by the way. You might know that. My two older sisters got a pair of roller skates and my youngest sister got a pair of roller skates, and I had to borrow or beg or plead sometimes if I wanted to have a go on a pair of roller skates. And that's the way it was. And this might sound to you like a very sad story, but actually it's a very positive story, because through my upbringing and through that unfairness and unjustness, I learned that there are two things in my life that I will not tolerate. And as an adult, and all of the years since my adulthood, I have been adamant. If I see someone being unfair to someone else, I have to step in and say something. If I see someone being unjust, I've got to step in and say something. So yes, it was a sad story. Yes, I was a sad kid. Why? You know, well, how many of you out there were sad kids? But boy, did it ever teach me something. And it taught me to stand up for the injustices of the world. And it taught me to be brave and to say no when I see something that's unfair, or when I see someone being mean to someone else. So even those things that, you know, are adversities in life, and I know, you know, as children, there are so many things that are imprinted on our minds, and we find hard to let go sometimes. But what I try to do with the adversities of my childhood is I try to see what these things can teach me, what I can learn from them. And so I didn't get a watch, and so what? Guess what? I have a very nice watch now. I bought it myself. And why not? And so did it matter that as a kid it broke my heart? It mattered at the time. It matters because I learned to use that knowledge of that unfairness and that meanness to make a difference in my life, to make a difference in the way I approach my parenthood and my daughter and my grandson. So as much as I didn't like it at the time, as with so many things in my childhood, I'm so grateful for that experience. Let's have our next question.
We've got a live question from Jolene.
Hello, Jolene.
She watches every week she can.
Oh, bless you.
And she would like to know, could you please explain the difference between intuition and psychic abilities?
Oh, Jolene, that's a pretty good question. I don't know that it has anything to do with the subject, but I'll do my best to answer you. We always like to be thrown something off the cuff, so thank you. What's the difference between intuition and psychic ability? Well, all right. I believe that when we came to this earth, Jolene, that God did not just throw us here and say, okay, get on with it. I think he gave us many, many tools that we could use so that we could have the best experience that we can have, this best earth experience that we can have. Because after all, we are spiritual beings having this human experience, and we try to have that human experience in a spiritual way. So God gave us these tools, and one of the tools that he gave to us is our intuition, our senses, our five common senses, and our combining those, our sixth sense. And our intuition is when all of those senses come together and we have this feeling, this knowing, which is when our soul is speaking to us. So when we feel something and we have an intuition, it is our soul trying to tell us something, even if it's only pay attention to what's going on around you. Now, intuition is, we all have a psychic ability to some degree or another, and intuition is the beginning of that psychic ability. So if you were to want to develop your psychic abilities, darling, first of all, you start with that knowing, that inner knowing. You start with paying attention to your soul, paying attention to your intuition, and paying attention to what your soul is trying to tell you. So it's all part of the same thing. They're not separate. One is the lesser of what it could be. So your intuition is that lesser ability to sense, to see, to be aware of more. But because of that intuition, you're able to, if you would like to, you're able to develop that intuition to the point where you can reaching up, reaching out, and reaching out into the universe, where you can develop that intuition into something that is more. I hope that answers your question. Shall we? What are you grinning at? I've got my Carolyn is sitting here with a big grin on her face. What, did you like that?
Well, I just think it's the perfect opportunity to discuss the expectations that people place on you.
Oh, I know where this is coming from. Yes, well, people do put high expectations on not just me, but on people like me. It's true. And it's only very recently, very, very recently, that we had someone who wanting a consultation. And what I always do is I say to people, look, just let me know who it is in the spirit world you want to speak to. You don't have to give me their name. You can just give me the relationship, mother, father, brother, sister, whoever it is. Just, because otherwise I'm completely in the dark. I don't know where you want to go. And it's good for me to have a direction. Not that it always works that way, because sometimes the spirit world has their own ideas of what we're going to do. But also I say to people before the consultation, look, just send, just have a list of questions ready, sort of anywhere from 5 to 10 questions about what it is you'd like to know. And those questions could be anything from, I want to know if my daughter's happy. I want to know what she's doing in the spirit world. They could be questions about, your job. What about can you help me with my career? Can you help me with my children? What direction can I give my children? There are 1,000 questions that you can ask. And usually those questions are what is pertaining to you and what's going on in your life at the moment and how you would like help and guidance. Because that's the reason that somebody would come to me for a consultation. They would come for 2 things. They would come to connect with somebody in the spirit world in order that that person can give them help and guidance. So when you have someone and you're sitting there and you're ready to do this thing, and you might have had trouble getting Skype going or whatever it is, but still 45 minutes later, you're still prepared to sit there and wait for things to work out. And you say to that person finally, okay, who would you like to speak to? Relatives. Okay. Can you be a little more specific? Because you could have 50, 100 people out there who are your relatives for all I know. And again, mother, father, brother, sister, whatever. Yeah, mother, father. Okay. And can I have your questions? No. Do you have any, you must have some questions. Just give me an idea of what it is you'd like me to do for you. No. And I'm done. Now at this point, I'm done, because I've already hit a wall. Now, I know that there are some people who are very skeptical, and so they should be, of somebody like me, who are saying, oh, well, she wants them to tell her all about themselves. No, I don't. The questions could be finance. What can I gather for finance? You might be really rich or you might be really poor. They could be career. What do I know? You could be a road sweeper, or you could be whatever. What do I know? But as a spiritual medium and a healer, unless I want to sit here all day and just hang out with you and see what happens, because we only have a limited amount of time, I'm trying to get the best for you out of it. But mostly I'm trying to get the best for those in the spirit world out of it. And then if somebody puts up a brick wall, and I do get that people are skeptical, so they don't want to give too much away. I do get that. But if there's a big concrete brick wall that you can't get through, and I do not have the time or the inclination to chip my way through it. And then I disappoint people, and oh boy, do I come off that pedestal, and then I'm the worst person in the world. And I think that, when Carolyn talks about people like me and people's expectations of someone like me, I know that people have hugely high expectations. And I always say, look, I'm just a little human being. I also know that people massively, majorly put me on this very, very high pedestal. And I know that when you do that, all of you out there listening, I am inevitably going to fall off, because I cannot meet those high expectations. I'm just one person. So that you're not disappointed too much in me or people like me, try not to have those enormously ridiculous expectations. And if you want something from a spiritual medium, or you go to somebody who's like me, take the barriers down. It's okay to be skeptical. And I advise it. It's okay to be critical. I advise that too. But at least be open-minded and give this a chance. Don't have too high an expectations. Be hopeful and be prepared to just enjoy the whole situation. I think we've beaten that one to death. Now, next question. Can we have a lighter, nicer, happier question, please?
Sure, here you go. In regards to expectations and hope, what would be our hope when we see Buddha with bright lights?
Well, I can't speak. Who sent that question in?
Samantha.
Oh. Hi, Samantha. Well, I can't speak for your hopes and whether you have expectations. My hope, and in fact my knowledge, if I was to see Buddha and see the bright lights, I would know that this was certainly a message from someone extremely enlightened. In fact, when you see a bright light about someone, or an aura around someone which is bright and strong, it will tell of the spirituality of that person or that figure. It will tell of the spirituality and then the goodness of that person, because that's what that bright halo of light actually signifies. It is that person's energy field showing up, getting brighter, lighter, and so on, all the time. And what I would hope, if I were to hope anything, if I was to see that I might bask in that light a little bit, and I might hope that I might get a little enlightenment for myself. Next question.
Brenda asks, what is the difference between hope and faith?
Hello, Brenda. Hope and faith. This only my opinion, you're asking these questions as if I'm all-knowing and all-seeing, which of course I'm not, but this is only my opinion. Faith, which I have in abundance, which I've had since I can remember, which probably stemmed from my church and my early days in church and my wonderful family in church, who I've talked about before. Faith, and blind faith, if you like, is that knowing that, as our previous questioner asked, that intuition, if you like, it's a knowing that is deep inside of you that you can't even explain necessarily. You don't even know where it comes from, but it is a feeling that comes from your soul that tells you that a thing is right, that a thing is what it should be. And that to me is faith. And hope is, what was the difference between hope and faith?
Yeah.
Hope is hoping perhaps that there's something out there. Hope is wishing, and perhaps, you know, a little bit more than wishing. Hope is perhaps a strong wish that things are as you would like them to be, or things will be as you like them to be. But faith, I'm trying to give you an example. I have faith in God and in Christ. I've never doubted. I've never questioned. It is something that I know deep in my soul, and there is nothing, and believe you me, this has been tried and tested, there is nothing that can shake my faith. My hope is that, you know, my faith leads me, guides me, steers me to a good place always. My faith in God is paramount. My faith in people has been sorely tested, and at times my faith has been unfounded, and I've had faith in people who I should not have had faith in. So faith sort of brings disappointments as well as expectations. Hopes bring disappointments too, but faith is a constant. It is a knowing. It is something that you believe in firmly, that is unshakable. Whereas our hopes will change from perhaps day to day, and our hopes can be shaken. Let's have our next question.
Shiva is asking a live question, and I believe it's in reference to what everybody expects of you as a medium. Shiva Rose.
What a nice name, Shiva Rose. Hello, Shiva Rose. Thank you for sending in your question. And how can we help you? What is your question?
She asks, does expecting to meet the guides / spiritual friends block this meeting more? As in, after some years, I expect they show up?
Repeat that question for me.
Does expecting to meet the guides or spiritual friends block this meeting more? As in, after some years, I expect they show up.
No, I don't think it's because, you know, expecting or hoping to meet your guides or those who steer you and guide you and so on. I'm assuming you're talking about when people come to someone like myself. No, I don't think that would block anything. You might be disappointed because you might not necessarily hear from those guides. You might hear from other people who you didn't expect to hear from. But no, I think that what blocks, what creates issues is attitude. If someone's coming to see me, whether it's, you know, on a one-on-one or whether it's through Skype or FaceTime or however it is we do it, when they come to see me, if they come to me with an attitude of, you've got to prove this to me, they have their own idea of what I should say in order to prove it. They've come completely closed-minded about what they may or may not gain from this and about what they may or may not hear. They've literally blocked, and it's their attitude, and it's their sort of almost like a negativity, a demanding that it should go their way, not the way it might go. It's going to go their way, the way they expect it, and they're not giving, you know, fortunately it doesn't happen to me very often. I very rarely get people like this, and you know, and I just have to feel very sad for people when they come with this attitude, because as in life, you know, if you're meeting someone new, if you want to meet someone new, or you go into a social environment and you go in with that attitude, nobody's going to want to speak to you. You know, you're going to go in with an attitude, and it's the same with the spirit world. If somebody comes to me with an attitude and they're rude or aggressive, or they're, you know, they're a little bit, curt and sort of unbending and unforgiving. Who wants to talk to somebody like that? So, I certainly don't. And, I would have a hard time thinking that anyone in the spirit world might want to talk to someone when they're in that frame of mind. So that's what puts a block on. I'm hoping I'm saying your name correct, right? Shiva. Lovely name. And, so it's about attitude, and it's about people expecting and then demanding, not even giving someone a chance, not even giving someone an opportunity to show what they may be able to do, not giving the benefit of the doubt from the word go. Then that's ridiculous, and it's got to be ridiculous in anybody's mind. So that's what blocks it. Let's have our next question.
Shiva says, thank you. I meant meeting my spiritual guides, but it's okay.
All right, well, I can answer that as well. So what is she saying? What was the beginning of her question?
Expecting to meet her spiritual guide.
Got it. She, on her own, meeting her spiritual guides. Okay. Well, all right. If you're expecting and you're being a bit too aggressive isn't the right word, but if you're expecting too much, sometimes you put a block on yourself. You literally put a wall down, or you put a curtain between you, because you're hoping too much, you're expecting too much, you're perhaps obsessing a little bit too much, and you want it so much, which I do understand, darling, I do understand. But if you're wanting something too much, then that can be a definite block, So, I always say to people that some of our best experiences with the spirit world are in our half awake, half asleep state, when we're so relaxed, we're at that point of relaxation that we're not demanding and we're not pushing and we're not forcing, and it happens because we are so relaxed and we're in that way so open. So I'm going to say, darling, don't try too hard is what I'm going to say. Don't try too hard, because I know that there are people out there in the spirit world who love you and who care about you, and give them the chance. Don't push them. Give them the chance and they'll show themselves to you. That's for sure. Okay, next question.
This is from Tim. How do we learn to be more grateful and have less expectations for ourselves and others? And I thought maybe you could tell the story of the lady that came to see you, longing to talk to someone, and ended up getting a message from a woman who had passed, and her husband.
Oh, yes, I know that. Oh, gosh, yeah, I know
that story.
All right. Tim, thank you for your question. Each of us learns in our own way, and as I said earlier, often in our childhood experiences can teach us something, and it depends on how willing we're going to be open-minded, and it depends how willing we're going to be more accepting of other people and other people's faults and failings. Because when we get to be judgmental about people and about situations, we're blocking that ability within us to learn those differences, to be more accepting and to be more hopeful. Even though I've had my experiences of expecting and try not to expect too much anymore from people, I still remain incredibly hopeful. I remain incredibly hopeful about the politicians that we have, which is not easy. I remain hopeful about the people I meet. I think that generally our human race is good and people are kind and loving. So I'm always hopeful. So even being disappointed in my expectations does not mean that I'm not still hopeful, because I am very, very hopeful. But now giving and, being able to give, and the story that Caroline is talking about is a woman she was a regular client of mine who came to see me expecting to see, you know, to talk to all of her loved ones, and she had a particular issue in her mind that she wanted her brother to help her with. Her brother had died 2 or 3 years before, and she wanted this particular issue, help with this particular issue. So imagine then, she's been to me before, it's always worked very well. So imagine all of a sudden I'm talking to a lady, she has no clue who it is. Doesn't mean a thing to her, the name doesn't mean anything to her. And we are at this point focusing actually on this, my client's, Anna's family. So I've never seen this woman before. So I say to Anna, because she's a lovely person, do you mind if we carry on with this? Do you mind if we do this, even though you don't know her? Maybe, you know, maybe she'll sort of enlighten us a little bit as to what relationship she has with you. And sure enough, she explained how she died of cancer, that she'd left 2 little girls behind and a husband, and they were grieving, and on it went. And then she said the one thing that tied everything together, and she said to Anna, through me, tell Anna I've seen her climbing over the fence, and I've seen her taking food to my husband and my family. And Anna was completely shocked, because 2 or 3 days before, her neighbor, young woman, had died of cancer, and they'd not had the funeral yet. And Anna was so struck by how quickly this lovely neighbor of hers was able to not only communicate, but was desperate to get a message to her husband and her family and her husband's family, especially her husband's brother. They were very close. And she said to me, could I ask Anna, could she have this consultation? And here is Anna. She's come with her own issues and her own problems. And I looked at her and I said, well, she's asking, could we use this time that you are paying for? She's asking, can we use this time? Because she would very much like it if you could send this message to her husband and her family. And without a thought, without one teeny thought, Anna said immediately, of course, yes, of course. Her problems could wait, obviously. They were important, but this was more important still. And we spent the next hour talking with the neighbor, who gave messages of hope and love. She gave information that Anna didn't know anything about. Everything was recorded. It was all recorded on a tape. And at the end of the session, the neighbor said to Anna, would you please climb over the fence and take this to my husband? So the session ended. But then Anna said to me, I don't know what to do. I want to give this gift, but what if he turns me away? What if he thinks I'm crazy? What if he thinks that this is the devil's work? What if? And I said to her, you know, Anna, I don't think you would have been asked to do this if your neighbor hadn't thought that her husband would be receptive. So I can't tell you have to do it, and I can't tell you should share it, but it is a gift, and it wasn't a gift for you, although I think it is in part a gift for you. But this is a gift that you could give to your neighbor. This is a gift you give to your neighbor's husband in his time of need. And so Anna went home with the tape, and she went back and forth over the next day. And she finally took her courage in her hands, and she climbed over the fence just as her neighbor had said she'd seen her do. And she knocked on the neighbor's door, and her husband came to the door. And of course, you know, the wife had only died a couple of days before, 2 or 3 days before. And as I said, they didn't have the funeral yet. And there is Anna, and she's got her little recording machine with her, and the tape and everything. And she says, can I come in? And told me after she was shaking like a leaf, knees knocking. It was the gift she was afraid to give for quite understandable reasons. And she said to her neighbor, he invited her into the living room. She said, you know, you might think I'm crazy, but I have to give you this. And if you could just listen to it, I would really appreciate it. I've been asked to do it. I understand if you don't want to listen. I understand if you want to turn me out of the house. But I have to give you this. And she didn't tell him what this was. So he sort of looked at her as if she was a crazy person, but he shrugged and said, okay. And she put the tape on, and there he heard me talking, and he heard his wife talking. And she began talking about things that my client Anna didn't know about. And she began giving information to the husband. And at some point, within the first 5 or 10 minutes of this, the brother of this man came in, looked to see what was going on, obviously was aware of a tape playing, and he quietly sat down and he listened too. And an hour went by, and at the end of that hour, the man stood up, the neighbour stood up, and he went over to Anna, and he pulled her up, and he gave her a big hug, and he said, I just don't know how to thank you. The funeral's tomorrow, and we just didn't know how we were going to get through it. And I'm now going to take this and share it with my family and with my daughters. And the next thing I knew of this story was the next day was the funeral. And of course, it was a very sad affair. This young woman was only in her 40s and left these 2 young children behind and so on. It was a very tragic situation. So then, why people wondered, why the people of the village wondered, why did the minister wonder, why did the neighbours wonder, why, as they walked into the church bearing the coffin, all of the family were smiling. Now, what a gift. And that's a true Thanksgiving gift. And it's a true giving of setting something aside that you want for yourself, setting something aside that is important to you, and giving to someone else at the cost of yourself. That's what true giving is about. And no, we're almost done. Do we have any more questions?
Jolene just asked kind of a personal question. She was wondering, what are you thankful for?
Oh gosh, the list is so endless. The list is endless, Jolene. Thank you for asking. I'm so thankful for my daughter and for my grandson. They're at the top of my list. I'm thankful for Grey Eagle. I'm thankful for the spirit world that they trust me enough to let me help others. That's huge. That's a huge thing to be thankful for. I'm thankful that Christ is in my life. I'm thankful that God is in my life. I'm thankful for all the friends. I'm thankful that my egg custard that's in the oven right now hasn't burned to a crisp, we hope. I'm thankful for so many things. I'm thankful for my health and for the knowledge that I have, and I'm thankful for my life. I think that we all have things that we wish we didn't do. We all have things that we wish that we should have done. And, you know, we all have things that have been left unsaid that we know that we should have done differently or said something differently. But the things that we should have done and didn't, or the things that we did and shouldn't have done, or so on, they're gone and they're done. And it's no good. It's no good me wishing and hoping that as a child I had a watch, because who cares about it now? And I could spend my entire life worrying and wondering and, you know, bemoaning my lot, or I could be so thankful as I am for my childhood. I'm so thankful for my parents who taught me how not to be. And you can see, Jolene, the list is endless and on and on and on and on. But thank you. I'm thankful that you asked me that question. So thank you. It's made me smile. Okay.
What is the English equivalent to our...
Oh gosh, well, I don't know, because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but you know what I used to love as a kid and then even as an adult was we have what we call our harvest festival. I don't know if you do the same thing here in the States, but in many, many countries, people have a celebration of the harvest, and it's often combined with a religious thing. And in my wonderful church, which I was and still I'm so thankful for, we had a harvest festival. And what we used to do is we used to ask the parishioners to bring, you know, cans of things and packets of food and so on and so forth. And we used to box things up and take food on Thanksgiving weekend. We used to take food to the pensioners in our community, and we used to do all of those good things. And the harvest festival was when we were thankful for the harvest, and we would celebrate a good harvest and another good year. It always pertained to bread, obviously, because, you know, so we were thankful for the bread that we were given, and we were thankful that God allowed a good harvest and so on. You know, we have our own traditions. Thanksgiving, I think, in America is a very different thing in some ways, but very similar in others. And I think that truthfully, the bottom line is, you know, being thankful to be alive to celebrate Christmas, being thankful to be with family and friends, being able to reach out to people who we know were alone at Christmas. Now, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving because I'm British, but I have friends who always invite me for Thanksgiving, and I go, and I'm not celebrating Thanksgiving, but I am celebrating the food, and I always take food along with me as well. This year, I think it's going to be a lemon cake, and it might be a coconut cake. Who knows? It depends how much time I've got. But I think when we're busy being thankful and we're busy enjoying ourselves for whatever reason, in whatever way, I just would ask, as long as the list is of things I'm thankful for, I'm thankful too that I'm not one of those people who is homeless. I'm thankful that I'm not one of those people who is lonely. I'm thankful that I'm not one of those people who's on drugs or who is abused or whatever, all those negative things. And I'm thankful for the fact that I can empathize, and I'm thankful for the fact that I care enough to, from time to time, do something about those people who have less than I. And so I would ask for all of you, perhaps you could spare a minute or two just to say a prayer, or to maybe give a little something to a neighbor who you know is on their own or lonely. You know, just take an action and give someone else perhaps something good to be thankful for. And on that note, now,
next week's live.
Well, next week we're doing Wednesday and not Thursday. I know it might scupper some of you, but it's Thanksgiving here in the States, and so, you know, I'll be busy eating somebody else's food. So we're not going, and Carolyn has got the day off, so we can't do this next Thursday. So we're going to do it on Wednesday, and our subject on Wednesday is going to be rescue work, rescuing lost souls. We've had so many people wanting to know more and questioning more. So I'm going to be telling some stories of my own rescues, and we'll be answering questions, of course, and discussing, you know, when is a soul lost? What is a lost soul, and how can we help those souls who are lost? It's going to be a fascinating topic. Yesterday, we put out our question of the week for our competition. And remember, you have to YouTube, to my YouTube, in order to enter, to be eligible. The question was, I'm going to repeat it again today. The question was, What was it? She doesn't know. She has no idea. All right. You see, we are live. We genuinely are live. So I'll give you the question in a minute. And she's rustling papers and grabbing all sorts of things. We don't know what the question is. So you know what? It's simple. Check out the YouTube little video. Here she has it. Okay. What is the question?
In which video did you tell the story of someone putting their head on your shoulder?
Yes. So, all right. So the question is, it's a two-part question. In which of these videos did I tell the story of someone putting their head on my shoulder? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, can you tell us who sent that person? So, in which video did someone put their head on my shoulder? And second part of the question, who sent that person? And your answers have to be in by whatever it is. Do you know?
Midnight next Tuesday, the
Thank
22nd.
you. Midnight, the 22nd of November. If you want to enter this competition, when you send us your answers, please could you just put your YouTube name, is it?
Username.
YouTube
Yes.
username. Can you put your YouTube username down for us? And that stops us having to search and search and search and search. Week, because we didn't have Eric's username, so we weren't even sure that Eric was in fact eligible, but it turns out yes, Eric was eligible and he won last week, and he's going to get his choice of books and CDs and so on. So yay to Eric. And remember, you know, you can still, even if you've won, even if you've tried, just keep trying and send your answers into us, because we love having this competition. All right, you can find me on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube, obviously, and if you want to email with any questions, you can email at Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. Do we have anything else?
Nope, we're good.
We're good. So that's it for today. I'm going to rescue my baked egg custard from the oven, and Carolyn and I might have it for lunch a little bit later on. And in the meantime, please, please, please have a blessed day.